say you're sorry.
After an accidental murder, Ronald, a lonely and unpopular boy, takes refuge in a fantasy world.
All will be for nothing if we don't heed the rules.
Today I begin drawing Princess Fancetta. She's the ruler of Atlanta.
An existence that becomes inescapable and deadly.
Rolling.
Got to get my notes up. There's a hair on my phone.
Ronald.
Welcome to Lost and Found and Rewound, where I'm pretty sure we've been keeping Rick and Jim's mom up way past her bedtime. I'm Chris Lost.
I'm Found Jim.
I'm Pastor Rick Rewound.
What were you? You were Reverend last time. Now you're Pastor? Something's happening here. There's a code. These are encoded. Well, we watched a hell of a film.
Yeah.
On VHS. It's called The Executioner's Song with Tommy Lee Jones and Roseanne Arquette.
Should have watched that.
Patricia Arquette. David Arquette.
David Arquette.
All the Arquette.
Have they ever been in a production together? All three?
They had to have.
Yeah. Man.
We won't know.
I think I'm going to put that on the list.
Arquette-ageddon.
Arquette.
Rick, tell us what film we watched and provide a synopsis of it.
The film we watched was Bad Ronald, the 1974 made-for-TV movie about a sensitive, artistic boy who accidentally murders a young girl, and his mother hides him behind the walls of her house. When his mother dies, poor Ronald is left behind, watching the new residents from behind the walls.
That was good.
I used the word behind 3 times, and I was just working, trying to find other words, and then I just gave up.
So do you think that the life of Jeffrey Dahmer was based on this film? Because he really gave off a real Dahmer vibe.
So you think Dahmer kind of just, his identity came from watching all of these made-for-TV horror movies?
Actually, Dahmer watched Exorcist 3 a lot.
Oh.
You know, he accidentally killed his first victim with a barbell. He just, in a fit of rage.
Mm-hmm.
And this Bad Ronald did kill this girl. He didn't mean to kill her. He meant to throw her on the ground and her head hit a brick on accident.
He did, in a very scary way, squeeze her head between his hands.
And her head looked like it was bending.
Yeah, that could have been a VHS artifact. But, yeah. And then
just pushing her face around. With
yeah.
This. Yeah.
And then he knocked her down and she hit her head.
And then his second victim just had a heart attack.
Yeah, fell down some stairs.
And then there wasn't a third victim. He just tied a guy up.
Locked a girl in a basement with some dolls.
Yeah, that was the greatest crime of all.
I hadn't seen it in a long time, so I was not prepared for a doll warning, a trigger warning for you, Chris, because we all know. Yeah, you have a doll problem.
We all have a doll problem. Dolls are the problem.
That's right. Humans are plagued by these doll creatures.
Dahmer lived in his dirty apartment, and he stank up the place with his cooking up human meat.
Ugh.
This guy buries a woman. Well, I guess there's a little John Wayne Gacy in there too, because he buried a woman in the crawl space. I don't know who modeled their life after this film, Jeffrey Dahmer or John Wayne Gacy.
Maybe both.
They both started killing in the 80s, right?
Gacy started earlier, I think. He might have started right around the time this film came out, I think. I'm trying to remember the timeline. He promoted that kink show in the 60s where was it, Peoria? Quad Cities?
Mm.
There's always that story about the kinks being driven around by John Gacy, yeah. And then what else? What was the other weird?
Well, our friend Mark has a picture with John Wayne Gacy, right? It's a picture. Have you seen that?
I don't know. I don't.
Picture of Gacy like holding him when he's like being a birthday clown.
Yeah, forgot about that. But it wasn't. He wasn't sure if it was. Or is it definitely?
It looks a lot like him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's silliness. This movie wasn't. This movie had nothing to do with those two horrible people. Misunderstood characters, we could call them. I love this movie. Was this the first time you had seen this movie, Jim?
No, I vaguely remember watching it, I'm sure with Rick on TV. I don't know if it was how early it was. I definitely remember it, but not clearly. I remember Rick talking about it. I think I was younger than, but so Rick definitely remembered it. So maybe I'm just remembering Rick talking about
Yeah,
it. But
it traumatized me as a child.
yeah,
So there was a series of made-for-TV movies. Well, also Night Gallery.
I remember the concept, like the kid hiding behind the walls. I remember that and looking through the peephole. I think that's all I remember.
There's this film terrified me as a child. So it was on TV. So anybody could watch it, right? So I watched this as a child. There was also, by the same director, actually, Buzz Kulik, Crawl Space, which is also a terrifying movie about an older couple who take in a young man. I think he's a handyman or something. This young man starts living in the crawl space of their house and they can't get him out, or I actually watched that recently again.
Well, the director's got a fixation.
Yeah. But oddly enough, though, this is the guy who also directed Brian's Song, one of the most famous made-for-TV movies. James Caan and
Billy D. Williams.
Right, yeah.
As Brian Piccolo and Gail Sayers.
Yeah.
Both of what sports team, Jim?
Chicago Bears.
There you go. There you go. The Bears. You know, we're always doing that joke.
And there was also a made-for-TV movie called Gargoyles about gargoyles coming to life.
Oh, yeah.
Off of a building. So there was, and there's Night Gallery. There was this era of made-for-TV horror films that you just watch on regular TV. So they weren't bloody, but they were.
The Car? Was the Car?
No, The Car was actually a theatrical release.
I was saying this is in that vein of Hider movies, like Hider in the House and the Wes Craven film The People Under the Stairs.
Yeah.
Which was a bit of a bomb, but a weird people hiding in houses in awkward situations.
Like Anne Frank. Right when it started, I was like, Anne Frank is, obviously real and much more tragic. But right when they start, it's like his mom says, "Okay, this is what we're gonna do. They block off the bathroom downstairs, so he lives behind the wall." Right when that was all starting, it was just like it just started making me think about what it was like to be Anne Frank. Yeah, it's amazing for a made-for-TV movie. I mean, and Dabney Coleman's in it. That gives it an extra star, at least. You have to add on. But
the Dabney Coleman star.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, it's a bit crazy. Of course, could this really happen? But it's a really very entertaining movie.
It was great. I loved it, and the pace of it started slow.
Yeah.
And then really just kept escalating and escalating and escalating to the point to where like you just have people screaming constantly. Lisa Elbacher.
Yeah, that name, I was going to look it up. Who's that?
The oldest daughter who is dating the guy who likes to eat a lot, who has said, "I can't believe I'm eating here because my sister was killed in this house," or whatever he said. Yeah. Or the guy who killed my sister used to live here. She was not the love interest, because there really isn't a love interest, but the female character in Beverly Hills Cop.
Okay.
Plays Axel Foley's friend in Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah, Beverly Hills Cop, huh?
Which is, I swore I saw her. I was like, who do I know this from? Or how do I know this person? And no way would I have put that together. I had to look her up. Linda Watkins, who played Mrs. Schumacher, who met her demise, the nosy neighbor, for being nosy, right? So there's a bit of a morality tale there. This was her last film. She died 2 years after this film was made. Maybe because she had to be dragged into the crawl space. They use the actual actor.
Yeah, it felt like it was her, but I guess they just had, usually when they have a stunt man doing that, it looks like a guy with a beard, wearing a dress and a hat. But this looked like the actress,
right?
So they at least got a stunt woman who was a similar bulk of the actress to be dragged into the basement or under the house. But yeah, it seemed like maybe it was her. Extra $200.
Right. If you do your own stunts. So you were 6 or 8 when this came out? The 1974?
Yeah, it would have been 8.
8.
Totally inappropriate.
For 8?
Yeah. I think this movie I think it's obvious why I would be traumatized by this film.
Yeah, it's creepy.
Yeah, it's creepy. Being a sensitive artistic boy and then, seeing what happens to sensitive artistic boys is that you accidentally murder people and then you get covered up inside your house, hidden away.
Is now the time you want to tell us something?
No. I think that's season 5 or 6.
Good teaser. And you were 6?
I guess so.
Yeah.
Did you guys see this first run?
This is my story of Bad Ronald. I saw it as a kid, horrified me, that along with Gargoyles and Crawl Space. And maybe they reran them on the 3:30 movie or something. It's
I'm
possible
sure,
a little
it's possible
later.
it's a little bit later.
But I do remember being young, right? So Night Stalker era. So the same kind of age and terror that I felt seeing Night Stalker, the Aztec bird heart pecking thing, all the same era in my mind. It always haunted me. And then in the very earliest days of the internet and the Internet Movie Database, I ventured out into a forum and I wrote, does anyone remember this film? I've looked everywhere. I can't find it. It's about a guy who kills a girl and then he gets hidden behind the walls of a house and he watches the family from behind the house. Almost immediately in the IMDb forum, somebody writes back, oh, great, another Bad Ronald question. Why don't people just search, for this stuff? And that was the last time I ever participated in any online forum because it was just immediately just like, great, another stupid idiot asking about Bad Ronald. And it's like, what?
Cut to a guy living in his mother's basement surrounded by VHS cassette tapes.
Yeah. And that's how I rediscovered Bad Ronald and then bought this VHS.
They talk about Bad Ronald on the Best Show a lot. And so I'd heard about it.
Yeah.
But had no idea how amazing it was. Oh, Barry Bates, the mom-son relationship.
Yes. Psycho, yes.
Could have almost been a precursor to what happened in Psycho. Maybe Norman accidentally killed somebody. Of course, that's not the story. The story is he poisons his mom and her boyfriend, I think.
Oh, that's right.
And then it was pushing some buttons for me, right? So single mom living with a weird kid, right, whose dad doesn't pay any alimony, got out of the alimony by, it was all a little too close to home.
But you were able to get out and about, leave the house.
On occasion, yeah.
Right.
And my dad did pay. He didn't pay alimony. He paid $75 a month in child support. So
nice.
Which I actually used to think was nothing. And then I looked it up that back in 1980, it was actually back in 1972 was a decent amount of money. It's just it never went up. So
right.
By the time you get to 1982, it's $75. Oh, well. Sorry to bring everybody down.
Yeah. Sorry. You can edit that.
I'll just take all that out.
Awkward pause out of there. Not quite a Psycho Bates relationship because I think Ronald loved his mother and his mother loved him and he wouldn't hurt his mother.
And there was nothing incestuous about their relationship.
Although she didn't want him to be frivolous and pursue his artistic fantasy. She wanted him to study and be a doctor.
To cure her ailments.
To cure her ailments. Yeah, so a complex relationship.
There was a massive amount of exposition in that opening scene. It was like, there's a birthday cake, and then she's like, and it's your birthday today. It's like, well, yeah, the cake told us that, lady. You don't even tell us twice. You were talking about that, Jim, on a previous episode about how some movie we watched where they performed the scene and then they talked about what they did afterwards, and it was like writing a term paper with double spaces.
The mother was played by Kim Hunter, who you may not recognize because her most famous role was as, Zira in Planet of the Apes. And so she's always behind that awful monkey mask and her mouth barely moving, but that's her, the main female ape in the Planet of the Apes movie series, across from
Roddy McDowall.
Roddy McDowall, yeah. I need to go back and look because she looks a lot different, but according to IMDb, she's also Stella in Streetcar Named Desire.
Really? That makes sense.
Yeah. She's blonde in that, right? Was she blonde before? Is Stella blonde? No, Blanche is blonde. Okay, so maybe, yeah. I'm going to have to go back and look, but that would be, 15 years earlier. And she's not wearing a monkey mask.
Well, the second mother was in The Searchers, John Ford's The Searchers.
That's right. And also in Cold Turkey, which is a film I've dabbled with talking about on this show. Maybe in the future we will. She violently combs her hair in Cold Turkey also. I remember that. She does like an agitation thing. And I feel like maybe she does an agitation thing in The Searchers too. She gets pretty intense. That might be one of her things.
All these women were very Mommy Dearest. The daughters reminded me of the daughter in Mommy Dearest. The moms reminded me of the mom in Mommy Dearest, which is a movie I've dabbled with. Maybe bringing on this show because it's the first movie I ever rented at Showtime Video was Mommy Dearest. It was the only one in beta available to rent that day.
I just watched the Faye Dunaway or the recent Faye Dunaway documentary or whatever interview life review documentary, and it made me want to watch Mommy Dearest again. Again, just like how she pulled that off, being
Joan Crawford.
Joan Crawford.
Oh, man.
Without any kind of extra makeup. I mean, makeup, but like just the way she held her, just spoke, and her manner and her facial, what would you call that? Like her posture and everything is just fascinating.
It's classic Hollywood.
Yeah.
Right? Classic Hollywood. This film had all the women looked like they were classic Hollywood actors, but they weren't doing that. Well, you know what, dear? You know, the Kate Hepburn kind of New England accent, some weird New England.
Mid-Atlantic accent.
Right. Yeah, there you go. You know, Rick. You know what that is.
The Mid-Atlantic accent.
Good for, there you go.
Piglet, John Fielder.
The real estate agent, right?
Real estate agent. The role he was made to play, apparently. I don't know why. Yeah, it does odd real estate agent.
Pushing these creepy houses onto poor, unsuspecting client people, you know? He's really good at it, selling.
Yeah, this high-pitched voiced man is not going to sell me a haunted house.
Well, they were like, I can't believe there's only one bathroom. He's like, but look at the molding.
Yeah.
He totally did the total real estate agent.
Yeah, and he also said, what was the quote before look at the molding? It was...
bathrooms weren't that important back then or something.
Yeah,
they didn't,
that was my favorite.
I don't know.
John Fielder was not only Piglet, he was, Mr. Peterson on Bob Newhart. That's what I remember him from.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, and I have no memory of this, he was in Sharky's Machine also.
He was in Sharky's Machine.
Oh,
but he's in so much stuff, right? But Sharky's Machine, who did he play in Sharky's Machine? That was in what, season 2, 3, way back?
Oh, the first one. First
season.
Yeah.
Wow.
Early in the season, too, I think.
First season.
I don't know, you could just hear him saying, like, Sharky. He was one of the Machine.
Okay.
You know what's really sad is I didn't put together that Sharky's Machine was like his group of dudes until I watched it, until Rick pointed it out, I think, after we watched it.
right.
I was just like, Sharky's Machine is just a cool name for a movie, man.
Yeah.
He's just a killer cop. Oh, well. I never said it was bright. Critics, 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, audience 55, with all the positive reviews just saying it's a cult classic.
Cult classic that apparently everyone knows about and knew the name of even 20, 25 years ago.
Still stings, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, totally does. I don't like that. I don't, because I do my diligence, and even back then, although I don't know if Google existed when I asked that question, I was just kind of like, well, what's the point of a forum like this if you can't ask a question? Like, what's the movie with the guy hidden behind the walls?
It's amazing the first time you get trolled and how much you fall for it. I think I got trolled a little further into my, like you said, the beginning of the IMDb. I was like a little couple of years into Facebook, and I wrote some long, stupid Facebook post that I thought people should read, and then somebody trolled it. And I was like, fuck, dude. I was like, it was totally reacted to it. And I was like, oh, this is trolling. I just got trolled, and it hurts.
Yeah, it does hurt.
Because you're like, I don't know why actors get so huffy about that. They're in the public eye. Why do they care about what anybody says about them? And then somebody says something nasty about you, and you're just like, how dare you, sir? So what was when you were young, you weren't scared by this or traumatized by this film, Jim?
No, yeah, see, I just don't know if I'm creating memories, or if I'm sure I watched it, but I just don't remember much of it. I just remember him being hiding.
To be fair, I've apologized this before, but I did insert a large number of memories into Jim when he was a child. Whisper things while he was dozing off, or I'd tell him stories about things, and then I was implanting memories.
Sure.
We shared a bedroom.
That's what an older brother is supposed to do, right?
Exactly. I mean, I don't see what the problem is. It's just sort of a ritual.
Younger brothers turn out really cool because their older brothers are just feeding them all the best stuff. That's not a joke. That really happens. Look at our friend Scott. He was like an accident baby, and his brothers were like at least 10 years older than him, and they were just like feeding him Zeppelin in the crib.
Zeppelin in the crib.
So
yeah, my friend Darren, he turned us on, my gang in high school turned us on to Can. This was in the mid 80s, long before that krautrock stuff came back. And because he had this older brother who originally was into Can in the 70s, and unfortunately like Frank Zappa and stuff.
Unfortunately, also like Frank Zappa. Well, that was the thing, is those Can records, right? There was a record label, a Chicago-based label that released a lot of the krautrock stuff, like licensed it. There's, like a small cohort of people from that era who, well, of course the records were distributed nationally, but there was a Chicago label, I believe, that did
The original releases.
Yeah, original releases.
Speaking of Chicago music, Buzz Kulik did direct a theatrical film called The Hunter
Yes.
with Steve McQueen, and I actually saw them shoot a scene from The Hunter when I was down. It was right around the same time my mom would take me to Chicago because she had to work on the weekends, and I saw them block off Lower Wacker to shoot a chase scene for the Blues Brothers. They also shot the scene in The Hunter where the car
Oh, of course.
came out of the Marina City Towers.
Yeah.
And of course, we all know that the Marina City Towers are famous now for
The Wilco Corncob buildings.
being,
Yes.
the cover of Yankee Hotel Foxtrot.
That was on either the front page of the Sun-Times or Chicago Tribune when they did that.
Yeah.
That shot that. There was a picture of the car going out of the Marina Towers. I always remember that. But you got to see it.
I got to see him shooting it. It was
Wow,
pretty cool.
that's amazing.
I didn't see anything happening at the Blues Brothers thing, though.
Oh.
It was just they blocked off Lower Wacker.
I was just on Lower Wacker with my son. He was mourning the replacement of, what is it, mercury vapor lights down there? As they've finally gotten down, they replaced the orange lights, that Chicago had everywhere. They've been replacing all those with LED lights, and now Lower Wacker no longer glows a sickly orange. It's bright bluish white.
Well, as we were pointing out before we started taping, they could just change the color of those LEDs. Lickety split, just turn a little knob and get them back to
Oh
orange.
yeah.
There was a lot of talk on the Miracle Mile commentary track about lighting and all the technical stuff, because one of the commentary tracks was with the cinematographer, Theo, the Dutch guy. They were talking about the coffee shop and making it all green using the lighting and stuff. Another thing about lighting, he talked about it, was at the end of, going back to Miracle Mile, the closing sequence after the missiles are flying around and they're up on the top of the building. He said he used a graduated filter, the kind of sunset filter that, the top is orange and the bottom is blue to make the sky more sunset-like, but he flipped it around upside down. So everything is kind of orangey on the bottom and then it's blue at the top. So that's one thing why those scenes at the end look really crazy, is because it's an inverted filter. He just flipped it upside down. That was cool.
An amazing job with that budget.
Yeah.
And it's not, I always need to check, it's not mercury vapor lights that Chicago used. It was sodium lights. Orange ones are sodium lights, whereas mercury vapor, I think, are the old school kind of bluish white.
Well, I mean, you just saved me having to answer a lot of emails, so I appreciate you correcting that.
I apologize. Preemptive, I apologize.
Preemptive, I apologize.
Kansas City, food-wise once only known as a barbecue town. But thanks to the Taco the Town podcast, everything has changed. Kansas City has rightfully taken its place as a taco paradise smack dab in the middle of the USA, and all of these tacos belong to us on the Taco the Town podcast. My name is W. David Keith, certified tacoholic, and I live a very taco-centric lifestyle. On the Taco the Town podcast, we're tasting every taco in the town. We shine a light on all of the taco-rific tacos Kansas City has to offer, unearthing great taco memories, checking the latest stories in taco news, and interviewing actors, reporters, chefs, politicians, and musicians about their love for tacos. If you love tacos like I do, you're gonna love Taco the Town. Available wherever you get your taco podcasts. A proud member of the Lotus Pod Podcasting Network.
Andrew Peter Marin was one of the writers on this film. This was his first job as a writer on, I guess, in entertainment beyond. I don't know if he wrote books. And he wrote a lot of TV movies for about 20 years, wrote 20 years worth of TV movies. And then John Holbrook Vance, the second writer, he didn't write much. He did a few things for about, same thing for same time span, 20 years, but he mostly wrote novels. So he dabbled in video entertainment, screen entertainment writing, but mostly wrote books.
What I read is that it's actually based on, he's the author of the original novel that the film is based on.
Oh, so maybe that's his contribution.
Yes.
But he was also the screenwriter, I think
Yeah.
Or maybe they just gave him
Probably,
credit.
yeah.
I don't know.
The novel apparently is much worse.
Is it?
Is that, yeah, what it sounds much worse. Like the murder is more intentional. Bad things happen to the young ladies in the house. So it's much worse. This was sanitized for television.
It still was troubling.
Yes, it was very troubling.
To your point, Rick, about TV movies having an effect on you, I think there's something extra creepy about getting away with something in the television format. It feels like these directors were a lot more powerful with implication. I don't know how to describe it, but I would watch these movies as a kid out of the same effect, as a sensitive young child. And there was stuff being implied that didn't happen, but really did bother me. Like even that scene where he violently kills the first girl, there's stuff being implied there that just, it doesn't really happen, but your head goes there, I guess.
I do remember being younger and seeing all sorts of films, TV, movies where they're implying things. And it's like, I know something bad or they're implying something and it's scaring me or upsetting me, but I don't know exactly what it is. Like the implication just of something mysterious or dark or sexual or and then it's just like, ooh, I don't know what it is. I don't know what they're implying, but I don't like it. I feel uncomfortable.
Well, something happens with Stanley and Blanche off screen in A Streetcar Named Desire, but you're not sure if it's rape or...
Exactly that type of thing where you'd see that in TV movies or just movies and you understand that something's going on, but it's like, what is it? What is that mysterious thing that's so terrible? It's very upsetting.
How did you feel about them using real instruments, acoustic instruments for the soundtrack, Jim?
Instead of synthesizers?
Yeah, it would have been amazing if Tangerine Dream did this. Then yet another star on top of the Dabney Coleman star.
We got a bunch of German hippies to write the music for this.
Well, the music was fine. Frankly, I wasn't. It was pretty generic. Yeah, I wasn't paying attention to it. I didn't. But
well, what I noticed was that they had the opening kind of music, and then for maybe the first 15, 20 minutes where he's hanging out with his mom in the house and everything before he murders. Yeah, there's no music.
And it was slower. He did a really good job with pacing because at the beginning I'm like, ooh, this is going to be slow. No music. And the real present wrapping, it was, granted, it was like on there pretty loose. But nowadays I hate it when they bring out a present. They just pull the top off of it like it's a wrapped box.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, just wrap it. Just buy 6 and wrap 6 because they do that. So they, if they redo the scene.
Oh yeah, they don't. Yeah. It's just lazy filmmaking.
It is, and they do it everywhere now. Yeah, I even saw a movie where they're using a box with a lid, and I'm like, come on, just wrap.
There's some excellent acting from the kid, from Ronald.
Scott Jacoby,
like he was really working it, like the eating, the creepy, like psychotic chewing. He started with an apple and then this candy bar, but the apple right at the beginning, it's just implying there's kind of something wrong with them. He's a little off.
Or making him seem rat-like, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
And that goes back to Psycho and Norman Bates, right? So that was
ticks and things.
Yeah, so him eating the candy corn and stuff, I think that was a quirk to make him more bird-like.
That is the weirdest eating of anything in a movie, is him eating that candy corn.
Yeah. Is it candy corn or is it seeds? I can't remember.
Yeah, maybe seeds. Was Ronald bad? What do you think?
He was obviously picked on, bullied, and I don't think he intentionally, he was very mad at the girl. He was really angry, and he definitely didn't intend to kill her. But
he put hands on her, though, right?
Yeah.
This is a much younger girl than him.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. But he's just been tormented, I guess. He's bullied by everybody, and he just can't take it and lashes out.
But then he quickly buries the body.
Yeah.
That's where I think he crossed the line.
Right. He's definitely unstable. That's, it's right at the beginning of the movie, it's just like, you were saying it was slow. It is, but then once it gets going, it's just like, then he just makes one bad decision after another, right?
Yeah, so it depends on your definition of bad. It's kind of like Bad Decision, Ronald.
If he were a good kid who did something on accident, he'd just go home or he'd get some help, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the film L'Argent that I watched, the Bresson film about money, and it's all about innocent person getting blamed for counterfeiting, and then his whole life spins out of control. That would be a tragic film also, though, if Ronald was a good kid and he said, oh, I didn't it was an accident, and then he goes into jail, and then his life falls apart because he just, accidentally murdered this this poor girl as opposed to killed her and then buried her. That's bad. And the mom even says that. Oh, I wish he hadn't have done that.
Right.
Now it's going to be hard to
cover up your crime.
Yes.
So this is a bad mother too, right? She's not a good person. She should call the cops and try and talk their way out of it.
But Ronald's a good person. I think she believed he was a good. Yeah. But you're right. Yeah. Boy, the parents disappear too, right? So like she dies, she's gone, and then the Dabney Coleman and Pippa Scott go away for the weekend at the end of the movie, and they never come back. Oh, they do come back right at the end. Are they there at the end?
It seems like everybody's there.
Are the parents back from?
I don't think so.
It's just the cops. No,
No,
they're
no,
still
'cause they're
they
still
don't
there.
come
They're
back
gone.
till Sunday.
Yeah.
You guys recommended that I watch the Anderson tapes, and I did watch it.
Oh.
It's fantastic. Scott Jacoby, you remember him from the Anderson tapes?
Ooh, he's in that, huh?
Yeah.
Is that before this? Is he like a kid?
Yep. You remember which kid?
I don't. It's been a while since I saw the Anderson tapes.
I don't know for sure, but my theory is they break into one of the apartments and the kid can't get out of his bed. I think he's bedridden.
Oh.
Can you say bedridden? Is that a bad thing to say? Bad Chris Law.
You're talking about an old movie. So
Oh,
in an
yeah,
old
right.
movie,
It's an old
he would
context.
be bedridden.
Remember the kid, and the kid kind of, I forget what he does, but he's kind of, he gets on the ham radio
Oh.
and calls the cops on the ham radio and rats them all out.
Oh, okay.
He's like, I can't go anywhere. I can't walk. And he's like, yeah, leave the kid alone. And they walk out, shut the door, and he gets on the ham radio and rats them out.
Man. Garrett Morris
Was it Garrett Morris? Oh, is in
the
the
Anderson tapes, right?
Yeah.
He's one of the cops, right?
Yeah.
That's always fun to see him pop up. Again, that's like 4 years before Saturday Night Live.
Right.
And Garrett Morris is ancient now, right? He's still around, but he was older than a lot of the other not ready for primetime players.
And more established,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite Garrett Morris bit on Saturday Night Live was because he could sing, too. He has a classical singing voice where they just goes, King Kong, and they just show these, like, stills from King Kong behind him. He's like, he's the beast, He's like... I forget what's the big line, but like beauty killed the beast. And they're just showing stills from King Kong and he's just singing. You know me and surreal stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Should this film be lost, Jim?
No. It's a really entertaining, kind of disturbing, creepy movie that was fun for a creepy movie. It was, don't watch it when you're 6 or 7 years old, but you're a little older. I think it's
Or a little younger.
right. It didn't seem to
It just
bother
won't
me.
even, affect you.
Yeah, it's great.
Apparently, Rick found that this film wasn't lost because when he tried to find it,
Yeah.
people were like, come on, man.
Yeah, man, everybody knows this movie. You're wasting my time.
Should this film be found, Rick, would you recommend this film to your students?
Probably not. Just because it's, so obscure and weird. I have been teaching a video class again this year, and I give them an editing assignment, and I use the Prolinger Archives, which has a bunch of industrial and educational films that that are open source or public domain, and so you can use them, and edit them and stuff. I always use the 70s educational films, and there's one that's a safety film, and this is why I started watching Arc 2, I believe, is because there's this safety film that has this woman superhero and I was trying to remember the Shazam ISIS Power Hour.
Yeah.
And then I showed the students a clip of the Shazam ISIS Power Hour opening sequence, and it met with a lot of blank. I was trying to say, well, this is why this educational film has this female superhero in this cheesy costume. It's like, oh, it's, was part of children's television at the time, or this is before the whole Marvel universe thing. The superheroes were comic book cheesy people wearing styrofoam costumes running around the back lot. So talking about Bad Ronald and having to explain everything about made-for-TV movies and how you could watch, how they had horror films, but they were not violent, full of implied horror as opposed to direct horror, because you can show that stuff on TV, and it would just require so much explanation as to why it would be interesting to watch.
The equivalent, though, is like Nickelodeon. This was a weird time where you were trying to make entertainment for all ages. So the kid stuff was darker than it is now, and the adult stuff was lighter.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. And that was later, like in the 80s, like with TV, then they started pushing the envelope a little more later in the evening, right? So you'd have your Hill Street Blues, right, would be, and I guess like Kojak and stuff earlier and Starsky and Hutch, the later shows in the evening in prime time would be more edgy and grown up.
MASH was a little intense at times.
Yeah, but then the earlier they'd be less. You'd have the Facts of Life and Different Strokes and stuff, right? Those would be earlier in prime time. Back in the 70s, it was much more kind of in the middle. Yeah, and that's what I was trying to explain about these educational films from the 70s. They're scary and they're full of, like horrifying stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, the health teachers and just the teachers would routinely show us these films and videos that were just horrifying, terrifying, about car accidents and safety and
snake bites.
Yeah. It was just like, yeah, this is and also, yeah, there's this educational video of all these 15-year-olds skipping school and drinking at somebody's parents' house and smoking. And I was like, yeah, this is the 70s. They're like, why is this happening? And I'm like, yeah, this is just the way it was in the 70s.
Well, and then the John Hughes movies, which were kind of more kid-oriented, they had a bunch of shit in them that you wouldn't see in that you wouldn't see in a film targeted towards kids nowadays.
Yeah.
Non-consensual sex and showing everybody somebody's panties. I don't know. Maybe those are all like the R-rated films of that era. Like you were talking about Bottoms. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm interested in it. And the Olivia Wilde movie, Booksmart.
But the John Hughes movies weren't R-rated, right?
No, they were all PG.
Yeah.
I think.
PG-13.
I'm glad this film, I don't think it should be lost. I'm glad you found it and brought it to the show. I've always wanted to see it, but I probably would have never watched it on my own. I would probably recommend it to my son because I think he would laugh his ass off watching it. It is funny. It's like, I wouldn't call it a bad movie, but it has like the elements of a good bad movie where there's lots of funny stuff in it that they're not intending to be funny, but then it still is a decent, this isn't a bad movie. It just has a lot of that kind of stuff. Like the brushing of the hair so aggressively. And Rewound, would you watch it again, Jim?
Sure. Yeah. I enjoyed it.
It feels like maybe, when I'm in the retirement home, Richard, would you like to watch? What would you like to watch today? Would you like to watch Bad Ronald? Oh, yes. I'd like to watch Bad Ronald.
Let me tune it in. Let me tune the TV into Tubi.
Let me dial in your brain projector here. Would you like to watch it on VHS? DVD, simulated VHS or DVD or Blu-ray or Octacolor?
Octacolor.
Octacolor.
It's just an 8-color palette?
Future format.
Do you think that the color palette of this film is how we watched it today? Or do you think that's a transfer issue?
Kind of muddy.
Yeah.
Brown. I'm sure it's, partially.
There was a flash for a second where it was much more vivid.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice that?
I didn't see it.
Early on, yeah. There was like a little glitch. And so, I think that's true. Yeah. I'm realizing, though, is that our family did not have a color TV until maybe 1980.
Yeah.
So I would have seen this in black and white.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, wow. I can't even imagine that. Like all these 70s shows, they feel like they're like my memories of them are in color. In fact, I wish I could remember whose story it was. It was just like somebody talking about a rock critic or something talking about seeing David Bowie on Top of the Pops or whatever, that big first Ziggy Stardust performance or whatever, and telling his father how amazing it was, how vivid the colors and everything like that. And then his dad said, we had a black and white TV. So it was like just that idea that, these 70s kind of era events, and I didn't experience any of that in color, but my memory of it is in color.
I just loved TV. I even look at like old football games that were on in like 1990 when they're not widescreen, and they're like impossible to watch. And I'm like, and the graphics are too big, so like cover up the whole screen. They don't have the score on the screen, so you got to wait till somebody comes up and announces it to you. And you're just like, how did we watch this? Like, how you can't even see what's going on? Like, how do you see the football?
I just did a deep dive. Was it today or yesterday? Because instant replay was in the crossword. And then I was like, well, when did instant replay start and everything, because thinking about that. And then I looked up the history of instant replay. And one of the things they said was, the first instant replay machine was a very complex, difficult process to actually instantly rewind and play back in slow motion. Once they got instant replay working, that was what changed football football became popular on television after instant replay, because before that it's like exactly what you're saying.
Happened, yeah.
But it was even worse, where it was just like, yeah, you're just watching this live broadcast of this tiny postage stamp from a distance of the whole field. They wouldn't be able to go back, zoom in or highlight and show you the whatever the play was or the score, and so it was super boring. And then once instant replay, that's what revolutionized it and turned football into a television experience.
When they modernized football games, video games, you started playing from the perspective of the quarterback as opposed to the old school, like Tecmo Bowl. You'd play as if you were watching it on TV from the side. I didn't like the games when they moved them to the perspective of the quarterback because I did never watch the game that way. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to play it this way? I don't know how this is weird. This looks really weird. And now they have a camera down on wires down behind the quarterback as if it looks like as you're watching Madden, the video game.
Yeah.
Now they have to show you the perspective that you're used to when you're playing a football video game. But I never got into football video games after Tecmo Bowl.
Yeah, for me it was the almost like a foosball table football game where you're just spinning the players, or the one. What was the one with the magnet? And those like hockey games too, right?
Yeah.
Where you had the
vibration football.
Yeah, vibration football.
Yeah. Those games, and with the little kicker, I mean, those never work. They just buy them for you. You turn them on and do it once, and all the guys fall over. And
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
This
That was
sucks.
the thing I remember is always wanting one, but never getting one. But then anytime going over to somebody else's house, it's like, oh, it doesn't work, or it's like, oh, it's boring.
Yeah. Or I always wanted to play Mousetrap. We never had Mousetrap, and go to a friend's house who had Mousetrap. It's like, oh, it takes forever to set up. And like no one would ever want to play.
It's a one-time deal too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not much of a game. It's just what's that called? A Rube
Rube
Goldberg.
Goldberg.
Yeah.
Our parents were going to go out or something, and then we were at the 5 and Dime store, and it was like, well, you can buy a game to play for when we're gone. We picked a Ouija board. And Mom was like, ugh. It was just like, oh no, let's get a Ouija board. She was like, that's not going to keep you occupied for more than 5 minutes. Not a real thing. But we got the Ouija board, and she was right. It was very, very disappointing.
I told you guys of the seance we went to right at the Stanley Hotel. Have I talked about the Stanley Hotel
I don't.
at all?
You talked about. I
bit.
feel like you talked about it, but I don't know if you talked about a seance.
Sarah Lost got pissed off because the seance clearly had things that there was a doll actually in it that its head moved. There were all these tricks that happened throughout the seance, and we got out of there, and Sarah was like, well, it's half tricks but half reality or something. She like her thought was like some real supernatural shit happened, and then they had other stuff there in case it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, they were all magic tricks. And I explained to her, like, he knew what we wrote on the paper because those pens had cameras on them.
Oh.
And there's somebody back there telling him. And she's like, well, we could see his ears. I'm like, we couldn't see his ears. Remember, his hair was down over his ears. And she was like, son of a bitch. She got really mad, like, as I started to. And I'm like, and I think that girl was a plant. She's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, they probably rotate them. Because I think I've seen her throughout the weekend at the hotel. And she didn't look like she was a guest. And she was the one that pointed out that the doll's head moved. And she was like, when everything kind of failed, she was kind of the legit, he would like definitely know how to read her mind or whatever it was. And Sarah was just so mad. She was just like, oh, it's all rigged? I'm like, every bit of it. So then she's like, over the last weekend with a crystal, showing me how she can make a crystal. I'm like, Sarah, you're moving your hand. I don't know what you're doing. So should this film be rewound? Rick, you gonna watch it again?
Like I said, in the old folks' home.
Oh, sorry.
The brain projector.
Should that question be rewound? Well, guys, good movie.
Yeah.
Great pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Good times. Hopefully your mom's deprogramming or whatever was going on is over. We'll have to let her go to bed. It was good to see you all. We'll see you maybe in another 2 weeks. I think my next visit is out to the Central Illinois.
Ooh.
Maybe we'll do that again.
Very exciting.
Very exciting.
Lost and Found and Rewound is fully funded by Lost and Found and Rewound Foundation funds. Lost and Found and Rewound does not use crowdfunding because our listeners have better things to do with their funding. There's no need to post reviews of Lost and Found and Rewound because our listeners have more valuable things to do with their time. In all sincerity, thank you for listening to the show. We truly appreciate it.
Lotus Pod.